Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Assalatu wassalamu ala anbiya'i wal mursalin. Allahumma shalli ala sayyidina Muhammadin fatihil lima khuliq wal khatimil lima sabaq. Nasrul haq bi haq wa hadi ila siratal mustaqim wa ala alihi aqdaril azim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Everyone, may peace be upon you wherever you are. Alhamdulillah, on this remaining blessed night of Ramadan, we have another online lecture with a renowned scholar from Europe, Shaykh Yahya from Italy. MashaAllah, what a beautiful session we're going to have. A bit about Shaykh Yahya. He is the president and imam of CORIS, COREIS, Italian Islamic Religious Community, member of the European Council of Religious Leaders and Council for Italian Islam by the Ministry of Interior of the Italian government, promoting a series of initiatives of culture exchanges and economic development with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Islamic world. In a running team for the IHAI Institute des Hautes Études Islamiques, actively collaborating since 1997 with ISESCO, Islamic Organization for Education, Science and Culture, collaborated with CAICID for interreligious and intercultural dialogue, and the United Nations in the writing of a plan of actions for religious leaders for violence prevention in seminar organized in Fez, Treviso, New York, and Vienna. Participates in the Forum for Peace in Muslim Society in Abu Dhabi in 2014 and promoted by Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya. In 2018, he is nominated as executive member of the World Council of Muslim Communities as delegate for interreligious dialogue. In 2018, the President of the Republic of Indonesia invites him among the 50 international Muslim scholars to participate in the first conference of Wasitiyah, the Doctrine of Islamic Moderation. Presenter on Islam at the NATO College in Rome, lecturer on the Quran and its commentaries for the Master of Religion of Abraham and the Cattolica University in Milan, on knowing Islam and the Muslim world for the Master of Intercultural Communication at the Swiss Italian University of Lugano, at Lugano, at Lugano, and on interreligious dialogue in the prevention of radicalism for the Master Economic, Geopolitical and Intelligence Security of the SOI, Italian Society for International Organizations of Rome. So, alhamdulillah, and we also know that Shaykh father is Shaykh Abdul Wahid, the late Shaykh Abdul Wahid, Allah Yaham, may Allah be pleased with him, is the, what you call it, the first Muslim in Italy, mashallah. And he's also related to the well-known Sheikh, the Wali Allah in our region, who is Sheikh Said Alilingi. So today, Sheikh Yahya will talk on humility and nobility according to the teaching of Sufi masters. So without further, before I proceed to the lecture with Sheikh, I'd just like to inform all of you, you can send in your question. Inshallah, Sheikh will answer it to 906-87106. There will be listed on it on the caption, right? So without further ado, I'd like to call upon Sheikh Yahya to start the lecture, inshallah. Tafadal, Sheikh. Welcome, Sheikh.
Shukran. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina wa Habibina wa qurrata uyunina Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Allow me to send my best wishes and greetings to our brothers and sisters and mashaykhs in Singapore and in Southeast Asia, this beautiful region where believers and masters have been really spreading an example of dignity and of great service for Islam according to the noble teachings of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it's a great pleasure for me to be among you and this evening of Ramadan. It's Of course, you are in advance because I am speaking from Italy, from Milan, where we are 6 hours behind. And so I really hope that you can in somehow advance the blessings of this, one of these nights of the last nights of Ramadan from Singapore to Italy, from Asia to Europe. I take this occasion also to send my best regards also to MUIS, the official institution of Islam in Singapore, with whom we have been cooperating with former President Alami and our brother Bakri with great pleasure, and also with some of our dear friends in Singapore, especially the president of Pergas, Ustad Hasbi, who is a very distinguished and very sensitive, learned person who studied in Cairo and is preaching and teaching the essence of Islam in Singapore, as well as other very noble organizations in Singapore, such as Jamia, and with whom we have a close cooperation with ISESCO for a better knowledge of Islam in non-Muslim countries. The topic I would like to present to you today is the meeting point between two virtues, according to the teachings of many Muslim masters and Sufi masters as well, which is the two key terms on humility and nobility, how to be humble and how to be noble, according to the teachings of our masters, and that will be the keys to in somehow succeed to have a meeting between noble and humble qualities, according to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's exactly him that has is the model for us in humbleness and in noble approach to life and to spirituality. Some of the teachings will be in somehow taking from one book in English, which is from Imam Abdul Wahhab al-Sha'rani, The Etiquettes of Companionship, which is a collection of quotes on several different topics. Among these, you can find some key teachings of several masters from the Sufi tradition on humility and nobility. So this will be probably one of the main sources, and we pay respect to Imam Ash-Sha'rani from the noble Shafi Sunni school, but also linked to the Sufi Shadili branch, which is, if I may say, the same school I have been trying to follow, from the Shadiliya to the Ahmadiyya Idrisiya branch, which is, of course, also known in Singapore and in the Southeast Asia with several masters. Among those, you were so kind to mention Shaykh Abdul Rashid al-Linki radiallahu anhu. So let's go to the topic, how to practice and to learn to be humble and to be noble. So the first term is humility. And some of the masters teach us that we need to refer to one of the constitutive elements of our person, of our reality. And among the elements of every human being, there is the element of earth. We are made by earth. According to the Islamic tradition, earth and clay was part of the physical material element from which man and humanity has been brought to birth. And so in order to discover our reference to humility, the reference to our body and physical dimension, which is made of clay or earth, is quite important. Because some of the masters, such as Sheikh Ali Wafa or Sheikh Abu Mawahib al-Shadili, they teach us that the reference to earth is something which is beneath the higher level of creation. So if we start from the low level, this will help us increase our humility. The earth is also the place where normally persons and animals walk. And so in somehow it's the place where we have to be available to let ourselves be walked on in order to serve the movement of humanity. And on the other side, earth is also the place where one has to take care of what can come out from the earth in terms of vegetables, minerals, but also in terms of fruits, in terms of all those good results of the work of men and women that taking care of the earth and of the world, they eventually contribute to have the fruit of something that is living and gives also the opportunity to men and to believers to take from these fruits and be stronger in our service and in our faith for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So earth is a symbol that where we can try to understand how to be humble. So humble means to serve the movement of our service. Persons walk on earth in order to adore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so our part of earth needs to be humble in order to help this service and this movement. And in the same time, we have to start from a lower level to take care of what can come to life from the earth to be part of the cycle of creation and of the help and sustenance of our needs in terms of good health and good eating from what comes from the earth. But these symbols, according to the teachings of the masters, are a teaching to be humble in the sense of being consistent with the lower level of human being towards the higher level of skies and of Allah's will. So our will needs to take into consideration the lower level of the will in the harmony of creation, and in order to attain a higher level of sensitivity, of wisdom, and of meeting and recognizing the power and the kingdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is on earth, but also above earth. So in linking the lower level to the higher level, we actually succeed from being humble to be consistent with the knowledge and the service of Allah's will. So this is just the first example and teaching to be humble, trying to start making reference to one of the elements of our identity, which is clay, which is earth, which is the lowest level where we normally stand. And then learn how to stand from this lower level. Another of the teachings collected from the book of Asharani is actually making reference to another great master of Islam and Tasawwuf, who is Abdul Rahman as-Sulami, and one of his teachings have been collected in this Sufi rules of conduct, which is a collection of teachings of Shaykh as-Sulami, another Sunni Shafi master, but also a great teacher of Tasawwuf and the links between Islamic law and orthodoxy and the discipline of spirituality according to Tasawwuf. And in his teachings, he concentrated some points on humility, starting from the need of mujahada. We need to increase our internal discussion of our knowledge in order to develop a more trustworthy dimension on what is reliable and suitable for our spiritual progress. So we need to have this intellectual debate and not to be sure of each other, but rather practice and develop the internal discussion, or even tahqiq, which means to search for the internal and deeper truth on our needs and our goals. And in doing this, this is actually the practice of being humble. We are not sure of ourselves, of our knowledge, of what we do, but we try to practice our deeds and develop our knowledge with a reference to a humble dimension of life and of knowledge. So discussing in somehow in order to increase knowledge. And this is one of the goals of Muslims. And together with this mujahada, of course, there is the practice of dhikr, the practice of remembrance of Allah, and remembering that Allah is always higher and greater than what we can perceive, imagine, or think. So even if we have a very high and big imagination or perception or idea of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we must know that his reality is always bigger, greater, and higher than what we can imagine. So in doing this, in doing this dhikr on the reality of Allah, and in doing this mujahada on our effort to attain a better knowledge, we succeed, according to the teachings of Shaykh as-Sulami, to have a much more clear approach on humility. And among his teachings, there are 6 rules. The first of one is to not to concentrate on what is easy, but rather to understand that there are complexities in life. There are difficulties that are part of the trials for every Muslim to increase his honesty, his purity, his discipline towards the Prophet's example, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is through humility. And on the other side, one of the keys to humility is to go beyond any kind of pride. Pride is exactly the opposite of being humble. And so to be humble is a virtue, while to be proud is something which is increasing our nafs, our soul, our passion, our selfishness. And on the other side, another key rule is to practice rather juhd. So as reality is a complex reality, we need to increase our efforts, our sacrifice, and to and somehow face the obstacles, face the trials, face the difficulties, and not to think that everything should be easy, or we should rest on our success and be satisfied with the small results we achieved. We should rather go for a better knowledge and for a higher opportunity and increase our efforts in order to serve Allah and His will with much more full-hearted intention and action. And in this case, Sheikh As-Sulami teaches also that we need to keep awake and not to fall asleep. To keep awake means also to have a intellectual awareness, but also a spiritual sensitivity. We are looking for something which is truth, and truth is something that is a constant surprise. We will discover something which is always greater and even more deeper. And to do this, we have to be awake. We cannot sleep and be lazy. And on the other side, on this situation, we need also to develop poverty and not to develop material richness. So one of the keys to humbleness is really to succeed in being humble and in being poor, like the fuqara, and to achieve this virtue of faqr, which means really to be consistent with the essence of life and of God's will, and discover that He is al-Ghani, He is the rich, while we are in somehow connected to His richness. If we succeed to be empty, as we are now doing, practicing in Ramadan, fasting from ourselves in order to discover and recognize the presence of Allah, who is Al-Ghani, who is rich in our hearts and in our life and in our action. And the last teaching of Shaykh As-Sulami is to prepare for death, to be and to remember that our life in this world is part of a very limited time and space. But in order to prepare for death means that we are in somehow connecting this time and this space to another time and another space, which is eternity, which is the meeting and with the absoluteness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this should be our goal, and to avoid any kind of ambition, which is as pride. They are the two problems that individuals are and somehow misled, because either they are proud or they have personal ambitions, and so they forget their true virtue and their true orientation for life, seeking for knowledge and through humbleness the discovery of Allah's greatness, and among His greatness, His greater peace. Now, there is another great scholar, Shaykh Al-Ansari, and one of his books is The Station of the Wayfarers, where he describes in details 100 stations of knowledge for those who want to practice the way, at-tariqa, the way of the Prophet, the method of the Prophet, trying to succeed step after step for a new knowledge of Allah's reality. And among the teachings of Shaykh Abdullah Al-Ansari, he gives on several steps different teachings. And one of the teachings for to be humble is to be in somehow consistent with your intention, with your goal. If your goal is to be humble and to discover how the Prophet has been humble in his life, you have to have this will to succeed according to this goal. You cannot be lazy or careless on this intention. You should try to be have a determination to succeed in this goal, because it's a very important goal, and it cannot be attained with a lazy or very low profile level of intention and of action and of, if I may say, effort. So explanations in terms of be distracted by other situations, being always in somehow giving reasons or justifications for our success or for our unsuccess, to be to rely only on Allah's will and on His means of knowledge and of virtue, and so to concentrate on our link to Allah, tawakkal ala Allah, to really have this faith on Allah's will, who is the master of success, rather than to attribute to some means the success of our own hopes or wishes. And the third, and as a consequence of these two first points, to have a steadfast will and to be independent by any distraction or that could provide an extra help, you can find a very sacred balance. And the balance is the balance of those who are humble at such a level that they are completely uninterested of what mankind thinks of themselves and of their action. They are concentrated on the goal of attaining humility. They are concentrated on Allah's method to attract the servant to this noble goal, and they are not concentrated or distracted by any personal positive or negative impression that happens during lifetime in humanity. The other teaching always of Shaykh al-Ansari is that we should be concentrated on the truth of the Quran as really the reference and the point for any knowledge of our presence according to divine's will. So this means that if we are concentrated on the truth of the Quran as the truth of revelation, as the truth of everything, then we should not go to demonstrations or analysis according to a rational viewpoint. We should not think that we should prove the existence or the reality or the truth of Allah according to our capacities in terms of rational or personal or philosophical or cultural skills to show the truth of revelation. The truth of revelation is something which is the truth. It's not something which needs a personal demonstration. And in doing this, we are humble, because we do not rely on our skills to show off what and how much Allah and the truth is true. Allah and His truth is true, and we are just trying to serve this truth in every second and in every situation. And the second element is to rely on prophecy, and especially on Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We should understand that as well as we somehow are humble, accepting and recognizing the truth of the Quran, we should also be in the same way humble, recognizing the miracle and the mercy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So with these two references, how we approach the truth of revelation and the mercy of prophets or prophecy, we in somehow participate to the blessing of being humble. And lastly, through this approach, we in somehow share the participation to truth as Allah's unique presence and reality. So there is nothing that can distract us, nothing that can in somehow be integrated or associated with his truth. We rely on the means of his will and especially on the mercy of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But at the end, we really discover and realize how truth is the complete reality, and our being humble is part of our true reality as human beings, as believers, and as companions of the Prophet, and as persons who rely in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is exactly the idea of being humble, because the goal of being humble is to link and recognize Allah's majesty. So Allah is greater, his truth is true, his revelation is everything, but he is the majesty and the excellent reality. And as such, as if we have a link with his majesty, then we are in somehow humble. And the link between a humble Muslim with the majesty of our Lord, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is really the way of being humble. Now, let me pass on to the second term, which is being noble. But linking being humble to being noble, I want to stress that the teaching of the Prophet ﷺ is not to be either one or the other. It's not to choose between being humble or being noble, but to be both. And this is really a very complex secret. To be humble is to be noble, and there are two different ways that are in somehow interconnected. So it does not mean that to be humble you should not be noble, and it does not mean that if you are noble you are not humble. But this is exactly how the Prophet was behaving. He was contemporarily humble and noble, and this is what really is very peculiar to his teaching, and what we are trying, inshallah, to learn. And noble goes, if on one side to be humble is the discovery of the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our link to his majesty, to be noble is also to be close to the Prophet's character of dignity. He is an example of dignity as a man, as a believer, as a prophet, and even in terms of practical family life, social life, in his responsibility as the governor of Medina, and of course in his spiritual teachings as a master, as a prophet, as a jurist, as a person who could in somehow host and give the sound of truth through the language of revelation. So the prophet is actually really our master to be noble. So in being his believers and his companions as Muslims, we should discover the dignity of our link to the prophet. And there are different ways, according to the teaching of Shaykh Imam Abdul Wahab al-Sharani, to practice the opportunity to be noble. To be noble, we can describe this in our greetings. We can describe this in our behavior towards the person who we are meeting. We can attain nobility also in our family, in our relation, for instance, with our parents, but also with our masters, with the elders, with the youth, with the persons who are more qualified or less qualified. And Imam Sharani concentrates a lot on how to be noble in the relation with your brothers and sisters in Islam and in the way of tariqah. The brethren is one of the main helps to attain humility and nobility in the same time. You discover to be very humble in the service towards your companion and your brother and your sister, but in the same time you also discover how to be noble, how to serve with dignity, taking into consideration the qualities in your service and not only the lower situations. So the first example provided by the book on the collections of Imam Sharani would be the greetings. And to do greetings is very important because in somehow you are noble and humble at the same time, because when you address to the other, Assalamu alaikum, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, you are in somehow recognizing in your interlocutor, in the person, in the brother, in the sister, in your parent that you are meeting, the presence of Allah, the presence of His rahmah, the presence of His peace. So Allah's peace and Allah's mercy is in the hearts of the person you are meeting. And when you address the greetings of peace and mercy, you are in somehow recognizing and remembering this priority, this presence, even before what he can represent as a friend or as a parent or as an employee or as a or any other kind of relation. So this is somehow giving priorities to what is noble and being humble. I am humble because I refer to my interlocutor, to the person who am I meeting, by greeting him, honoring him with the remembrance of Allah's peace and Allah's mercy in his person and in his heart. So this is the relation towards greetings. And of course, you can remember that the first greetings of peace were those of the angels obeying to Allah's order towards Adam alayhi salam. So in somehow mankind, if they follow prophecy, they represent the host of Allah's peace and mercy. And the greetings of the angels are symbols of our humble greetings to our interlocutor, recognizing these divine qualities in our brothers and sisters. So you can understand that the greetings are in somehow this very special relation in being humble and in being noble towards the honoring the other. Another situation is that we might be meeting a person And then we will be greeting him, paying respect, and somehow preparing for the next meeting. And this is very interesting because according to the teachings of our Sufi masters, preparation is the key duty for our life. We should prepare for the meeting with our interlocutor, and our life is a preparation that is in somehow interrupted by the meeting itself. So we could say that our life is a meeting after the other, because indeed we meet a lot of persons from the morning to the evening in our daily responsibilities and pleasure and life and traveling. But the teachers remind us that actually the essence or the priority in life is not meetings, is preparing for the meetings. So when our main duty is how to prepare for the next meeting. We had a meeting, we greeted our interlocutor, he has left. Now let us prepare for the next meeting. And through preparation after preparation, through meeting after meeting, we are in somehow paying respect to every kind of different interlocutor, greeting him and paying honor to our the next meeting. And in this preparation, there is really in somehow the secret of our preparing ourselves for the meeting with our Lord Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because definitely at the end of our life, we will be meeting Allah. We will be conveying in a day where all of us, we will be meeting and seeing his wajh, his face, and receiving the judgment for our deeds. So this is the meeting. And life is the preparation for this meeting through other meetings and through preliminary preparations of every meeting. So in this preparation and in these meetings, we have the occasion to experience and to taste the secret of paying respect, being noble towards the honor of our of the person or the reality we will be meeting. Because at the end, we will be meeting the majesty of our Lord, and in order to prepare for this meeting, we need to be noble, and so it's not only a question of practicing purification, wudu or ghusl, but it's also really practicing salat in terms of linking our communication for the next meeting with our Lord. And in these different preparations, of course, we can meet a person who might not be so kind to us, and a person who is actually much more noble. So it's easier to pay respect to someone who is much more noble, and it could be more difficult to pay respect to someone which is mistreating us, or is not kind to us, or is not reliable or serious or honest. But the teachings of the masters say that whatever the situation needs to be recognized in its difference, we need to pay respect to our interlocutor. And this is a secret of how we should try to manage our relations with the others. And among these, there is another very interesting example. It happens, I guess, much more in the West, when one is in somehow very sad, very unhappy, because he sees that around him everything is in crisis, and the situation is getting worse and worse, and his trust on himself is getting even much more negative, and he is critical towards life and towards the world, and he starts to be pessimistic and says, well, where are the masters? Where is the truth? There is no more honesty. Everybody is corrupting each other. Where are the masters? And there, the teachers tell us that you should not never doubt on the presence of your masters. Rather, doubt on the your skills to be able to see. You are not unable to see, but you cannot have any doubt on the presence of the masters. The masters are there. Your capacity, your skill to see might have been lost. So it is not the presence of the masters that are lost, and so you do not have any chance to be in somehow sad or not have any confidence on the truth and on the presence of the masters and on the means of religion and tradition. Rather, you should start on being honest, recognizing that you have lost the way to see reality. Your vision, your sight has been lost, but it's not the presence of masters and of truth and of Allah that has been gone away. So rather pray that your masters and the means of religion might help you refine the quality of sight, and then you will be able to see truth and to see how Allah has always helped you with the means of tradition and of revelation. Another opportunity is, of course, to discover how to be humble and noble through our relations with our family, which means also our parents, for instance, especially when we grown up and our parents are getting old. And what happens is that we might be turning into pride, and we are in somehow impatient towards our parents. And there are 10 rules according to our masters, and this is actually the 10 rules of Shaykh Ali al-Khawas, who was one of the teachers of Shaykh Abdul Wahab al-Sha'rani, that teach us that we should first of all listen to our parents, really listen to what they recommend and what they say. Do not raise in front of them before they raise. We should pay respect and let them decide when to stand up, and then follow them as they stand up. We should obey to their orders. We should not walk in front of them. We should not speak aloud in front of them, but rather speak softly and sweetly towards them. Be humble towards our parents, but do not be proud of being kind to them. This is something that unfortunately often happens. We are selfish and proud when we feel that we are very kind to the other or to our parents, and this is not what we need to practice. We should be kind because this is something which is part of the Prophet's teaching and of the truth of our behavior, and not showing off our kindness in order to be proud. And then never refer to our parents with a negative approach. Never speak aloud or even shout to them or be harsh towards them, and try to serve them, providing for our parents the best we can offer, and not to keep the best of what we can provide for ourselves. Let us give to others the best and keep the rest for us, hoping that this will be a satisfaction for our needs. And lastly, try to in somehow increase their satisfaction, increase their being happy with your service. And this is symbolic because in somehow is the way where we are, as we were mentioning before, the encounter of Allah with Allah in the day of judgment. In the same way, if our parents might be satisfied with the service we do with an intention of truth and not of proud, and not of being proud, this might be in somehow symbolically the satisfaction that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides from himself to his servants, because he is satisfied of the service we try to provide for his truth. So you see, there are some symbolic links between the way we deal with our parents and the way somehow humanity can try to have a relation with with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The very last point, now that in Singapore and in Southeast Asia you have been already going after iftar, is also the blessing of food. The masters teach us that in the relation with food there is a blessing, and we have to pay respect to the fruits of earth and to the fruits of the work of those who have tried to take care of the earth, collecting and distributing and selling that everything that can help us with our meal, with our futur, and be thankful. And in being thankful, there is in somehow a way and a secret to be humble and to be noble, because we recognize the richness of the fruits that come to our in our plate, in our table, and at the same time we should not be in somehow too much lazy or fussy in order to choose whatever we prefer, and not to pay respect to the small pieces of bread that might fall and that they are part of barakah. According to the teachings, in every small piece of bread and in the whole meal we receive, there is a blessing. There is a secret that needs to be in somehow recognized and tasted as an occasion to practice humbleness and nobility as well. So we have this occasion to through different situations, as you can see, greetings, behavior in family, our meals, our encounters with friends, with companions, with brothers and sisters, with masters, different ways that are practical ways where we can discover our participation with the quality of the Prophet ﷺ of being humble and being noble, and in somehow linking our religion and our behavior to the dignity of the Prophet and to the majesty of our Lord. And this is a very complex secret in our time, because as you can imagine, in the modern Western world especially, one is somehow corrupted by a very selfish attitude, where he believes to be someone thanks to what he has, or thanks to what he thinks he is, or thanks to what others think he is or think he has. While the traditional and spiritual dimension goes completely beyond any impression of what mankind has on an individual, and it goes beyond any quantitative, selfish richness that one can believe might be something that is his own power or his own knowledge. It's something which is, we have to be humble, because the knowledge of Allah is Allah's knowledge. And we have to be noble in order to follow the Prophet's example, to serve, searching for perfection, searching for the complete qualities in all ways and issues and goals of our service. This is exactly the secret of ubudiyya, which is also part of the khilafah. So to be a servant and to be a vicegerent is part of the traditional and spiritual approach of being a honest Muslim, but has as a goal to follow the example of the noble prophet, and to be humble and to be noble. I think I would be stopping here. I hope this can be in somehow of some help for your Ramadan, and I'll be glad to answer to any curiosity or question also on Islam in the West, Islam in Europe, as a comparative approach with Singapore and with Southeast Asia, or any situation where I hope I might be able to respond to your questions. I thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam, Shaykh. Thank you very much for the beautiful lecture. Subhanallah, we learn a lot about humility, and it's not easy to be in such state, nobility and humility. Thank you very much. Allah bless you. I have few questions coming in, and it's all dealing with what your topic is, humility and nobility and so on. So the first question, Shaykh, excuse me, I have a problem accepting help from people. I grew up very independent. So no matter what, even when I struggle, I don't want to ask others for help. Do you think that this has anything to do with a lack of humility? Like, I think I can do everything.
Well, yes, I think that the question has already the good answer. Yes, it's a delicate situation. It's a very good question, because to be simple, I would say yes. If one thinks he is independent, in somehow he relies only on himself, on his skills, on his experience, on his wisdom. And so in somehow he's getting attracted by his selfish opportunities, and so he will be always a teacher, but not a servant. He will be always in somehow doing things, trying to prove to himself how great and how good and how efficient he is, rather than to have as a goal if his service is efficient for the other person, for the other parent, for the other friend. So it's a completely different perspective. On the other side, of course, in a more spiritual dimension, through service, one should not even be so much interested on the outcomes of one's own service. So make it clear, we should not rely or be concentrated on ourselves. We should be concentrated on the service for the others. But on the other side, we should not be not even too much expecting from the others a consensus or a satisfaction, because this will always go back to our ego, to our nafs. So to be independent is a positive aspect, but the true independence is to be in somehow humble towards the only independent reality, which is Allah. Allah
Allah.
al-Ghani. He is the rich, but he is really independent. He does not need our prayers. He does not need our service, but we need to serve and to pray Allah in order to approach his presence with a better level of quality and of purity.
MashaAllah, Sheikh. So beautifully said. Thank you, Sheikh. Uh, the next question. Sometimes being on the path, Tariqah, we have fear having pride. So we always put ourselves down by saying, I'm not as good as people think I am. But even when saying something like that, we actually secretly still enjoy being praised by people. What can we do when people praise us? And how can we show true humility?
This is a good question. There is probably too much of a psychological approach, but it's interesting. I like it because, if I may say, I see in our community, in the Muslim Ummah, actually there is a risk that in order to be humble, there is a victimization process, which is nothing to do with being humble. To be humble does not mean that I have to slap myself or say ugly or negative or bad things against myself. So to be humble is something which is always connected mostly, if I may say, to the position of the soul towards the position of the heart. So to be humble is, for instance, as I mentioned before, the earth in comparison to the sky. But I'm not saying that the earth is ugly. I'm not saying that the earth is bad. I'm saying that the earth is lower than the sky and that the earth touches the sky. So earth and sky are part of two different levels of divine reality. And so in doing this, we should not be exaggerating in giving negative situations. And to go back also to the other part of the question, of course, if someone says thank you, or if someone says, mashallah, what a great teaching, one of course can be tempted to have a personal satisfaction. But this is also a trial. We also have to thank our Allah and thank the Prophet. And if we do not thank the other, we are not thanking Allah and the Prophet. So this is part of a traditional way of communicating. And when we receive some thanking, of course, this goes back to Allah and the Prophet. So we are not keeping the emotions of a good praise that we receive, but in somehow we are hoping that this praise will be accepted by Allah at the end of times.
MashaAllah, Sheikh. Thank you. Is the way how you advise and describe it is, MashaAllah, beautiful. May Allah preserve you. The next question, Sheikh. Salam, Sheikh. There are many means of attaining nobility in this world, in this dunya. Some people chase rank in uniform group. Uniform group means you in military or police or any other, like hospital and all that. Some people get recognition. Some people get knighted. That means they reach a knight. Can we say that true nobility is moral nobility? An issue I would like to ask you also, how can boys be initiated into adulthood and true manhood, which embodies true nobility?
Well, that's an interesting question. The masters teach us that we being concentrated on being humble and practicing also the search for nobility uh, does not make us forget that in our life and in this world there are different roles and functions. So we need to pay respect to governors, to kings, to masters, as well as we need to pay respect to persons who might have a different rank in society. So it does not mean that we have to have a equal rank for all, although we have to be very careful not to think that the higher rank is the higher noble quality. To give an example, you can have spiritual masters who are also very important persons, maybe, but you can have spiritual masters who are persons who are very humble, and they are just cleaning in the front of the mosques, or giving candies to children. So it's not how you are behaving that is directly connected to your level of nobility or humbleness, but every way in which you are behaving might be part of humility and nobility. So, for instance, to give an example, a father, when he receives respect from his son, somehow he is in a rank where he shows his nobility in some way. But even his son, when he's paying respect to his father, he's showing with a different rank always nobility and humility. So you see, one thing's the ranks or the aspect of service can change, but the essence of humility and nobility has to be in somehow is independent by the way we are serving this. I think this is quite important. Otherwise, we always think that the higher the rank, the higher the nobility. It's not
Oh,
exactly like that.
mashallah. Thank you, Shaykh. Interesting. Mashallah. Shaykh, another question is, when we are given leadership position and a certain rank to lead a team, how do we remain grounded and not be swayed by our rank? When someone challenges us with a suggestion that might be better, how do we respond with humility? Is being humble not to speak confidently or with yakin, because it might be talking as if we know everything as a leader? Yeah.
Well, yes, that's a very interesting example. Of course, when one is in a leading position in society, in dunya, one should remember, according to Islamic teachings, that to be a leader means that you need to you have a responsibility. It's not a selfish occasion of being proud, but it's actually a responsibility. So you are leading yourself to do even more for those who are led by your leadership. So your leadership without persons who are rightly led is absolutely empty. So it's not something that is independent by the persons you are trying to lead. So in this you have a very high responsibility. If you are a mother and you have a lot of children, your leadership is to be a good mother to all those children of different age and of different gender and with different situations and wishes of every kind. And if you manage this leadership in this situation, then you in somehow are fulfilling your responsibility. And the wisdom is that you cannot find a same solution for every different situation. So every time you have a challenge, because a mother needs to find a correct approach and a correct solution with that child, and a different solution and a different approach with another child. and as well in family or in her work or in society or while she is in practicing prayer or dhikr. So this leadership is always a trial for a discipline, and through the way we manage our leadership, we will inshallah be judged on how we actually took our responsibilities. But be aware that again, the true leadership is not the person who is higher in rank. Every person is a leader, but he needs to be a wise leader, and to be a wise leader, he must practice humility and nobility. Because if he practices his leadership without any humility and without any nobility, this will be unfortunately a very dunyawiya, personal, selfish, proud leadership. And this leadership brings only corruption in his soul and also in the persons he's leading. So humility and nobility, once again, if I may say, are keys to understand our leadership in every different situation. One can be poor, can be young, can be an orphan, but has a leadership to practice.
MashaAllah, Shaykh. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much. It's actually very beautiful explanation so that we can understand our inwardly and outwardly are connected also. But actually, you were mentioning about children just now, and the next question is somehow related to it. There's this sister. He said that I have three boys, and my three boys now they are between 9 to 12 years old, and I find it difficult to discipline them because I'm a single mother. So how do I, at their age, nurture them nobility and humility so that they can grow up to be a better person, that they can, contribute to something rather than becoming something that is not good.
Well, but please remember that one of the verses of the Quran stresses that Allah does not give to any person more than what he can manage. So in the differences and in the varieties of human trials, every Muslim believer has the solutions for his specific trial. And so, if I may say, there is no situation where any person can be consistent with his responsibility and without being able to practice and to teach nobility and humility. So, of course, I probably cannot give the practical answer to this lady, to this sister, to this mother. But I think, what I would say is that she must be confident that Allah, in her situation, has given her the situation and the solutions for every moment of trial. And in the way, as much as she is confident with Allah's will and with His help, she will be able to teach to herself and to her children and to her friends how to be humble and noble at the same time. It's not a theoretical issue. It's something that goes from the heart. The solutions and the qualities that Allah has given us is, of course, also in the mind, but it's definitely in our hearts. And so we are naturally able to practice our responsibility, our leadership, our service, if we are confident in Allah's will, because it's this confidence that inspires the true practice. Then, of course, we can be helped by training, by teaching, by learning, but this helps if I may say, the disposition, the way, the approach of the heart in relying in Allah.
Inshallah. Inshallah, Sheikh. Thank you very much. The next question, Sheikh, is in doing a good deed, we feel elevated, and most happy. And our internal dialogue, that means our mind and everything, is giving positive thoughts. Does this still consider to be proud and not humble when we feel good and we do something good? Yeah.
Well, this is a delicate question, if I may say, because on one side, Allah and the trials of life has given us the occasions to live and feel the goodness. So it is true, as the brother has questioned, that when I do something good, I understand that I feel good. And this is something that is interesting, because in some way it's how Allah teaches us to recognize the good through the good deeds. So we know when we do good deeds, and we know when we do bad deeds, because when we do bad deeds, we do not feel the same situation than when we do good deeds. So there is a difference between what is good and what is bad. So in some way, there is a reason, a spiritual reason in this emotion, in this satisfaction, in this feeling of goodness. Now, on the other side, what the masters teach is that once that you recognize what is good and what is bad, and you are thankful to your Lord because you were able to do something good and not something bad, then at the end you have to leave it to Allah, because only Allah is good. So at the end you have to somehow continue your effort in thanking Allah that has given you the occasion to recognize what is goodness and to serve according to goodness. So you know what is good, but you are not good. Allah is good, and so you have to somehow complete the spiritual and intellectual reflection. Do what is good, recognize in yourself what is good, and remember that Allah is good.
Inshallah, Sheikh. Very full. The next question, Sheikh, is from someone who is a non-Muslim but Singaporean. He said that he's been reading and finding interesting in Sufism, and now he's trying to see the direction of his life, not knowing the step ahead. So he's asking, what is your advice for someone like him who has been reading Sufism for the past 4 years actually, and now he's looking something in life. So what's your advice for him? Yeah.
Well, we are, according to the teachings of the prophets, and the prophets means also the prophets of other religions and other communities, and the teachings of our Sufi masters, who are the legacy of the prophets. We are living in very difficult times, times of crisis, times of ignorance, times where persons are forgetting their reality, their essence, their identity, and also the deeper reason of life. They do not know why they are living, where they come from, where will we go, what is the reason of time, of space, of existence, of life, of society, of service, of work, of success. So there is a great crisis in terms of intellectual thinking, and in this crisis there is a lot of corruption, there is a lot of destruction. Like at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was a great ignorance, but there was also a great quantity of false idols. So instead of believing in Allah as one only God and divine truth, there were several distractions and emotions and alternatives in terms of idols. And Tasawwuf, linked, of course, to Islam, helps us in somehow perceive the more deeper reasons of life. If I may say, the secrets of the mercy of divine's action and presence. So in somehow the teachings of the masters as legacy of the prophets are the teachings that might help us really understand deeper with much more wisdom what is the truth and how the truth is really acting and working in our heart and in our lives. So eventually, yes, Tasawwuf can help, but Tasawwuf is not the goal, is a mean. And so the goal is knowledge, is Allah, is truth, is al-haq. But in order to be humble and noble, to practice the way to achieve knowledge and truth, one has to be a religious believer. And practice one religion, and Islam is a religion that has also a special discipline. And this special discipline for the souls and for knowledge is Tasawwuf, is Sufism, which is part of an internal dimension and perspective and discipline of Islam. So Islam and Tasawwuf are means in order to help us overcome our misleading interpretations and go forward with a guided leadership.
MashaAllah, Shaykh. Thank you very much. Shaykh, I think that's our last question anyway. We like, on behalf of South Ilahi, we like to thank you for your time, your knowledge, your wisdom. MashaAllah, we learned so much tonight. Singapore is at night now. Italy is still in the daytime. Inshallah, we hope to visit you one day, inshallah. And
Welcome.
we hope you can come to Singapore, inshallah, soon. You came before, and we hope you will come again, inshallah. Shaykh, before we end this session, we need your closing dua, inshallah.
Well, then I will, with you allow me, I will recite a prayer that is part of the tariqah that I learned when I was a young Muslim student in Singapore. And so it will be my honor to try to recite this prayer on the Prophet.
Inshallah.
اللهم إني أسألك بنور وجه الله العظيم الذي ملا أركان عرش الله العظيم وقامت به أولم الله العظيم أن تصلي على مولانا محمد ذي القدر العظيم وعلى آل نبي الله العظيم بقدر عظمة ذات الله العظيم في كل لمحة ونفس في علم الله العظيم صلاة دائمة بدوام الله العظيم تعظيما لحقك يا مولانا يا محمد يا ذا الخلق العظيم وسلم عليه وعلى آله مثل ذلك واجمع بيني وبينه كما جمعت بين الروح والنفس ظاهرا وباطنا يقظة ومناما واجعله يا رب روحا لذات من جميع وجود في الدنيا وقبل الآخرة يا عظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. And congratulations for this occasion, and thank you very much for hosting me. I was very honored and pleased to be part of this and sharing with brothers and sisters in Singapore and in Southeast Asia.
MashaAllah, Shaykh, it's an honor to host you, and we are looking forward to work with you again, inshallah. May Allah preserve you, inshallah. Looking forward to you. Assalamualaikum, Shaykh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah, everyone. That's the interesting lecture by Shaykh Yahya. We like to thank him, and I think so many of us learn about the reality of humbleness and nobility, right? So tomorrow we have Imam Abdul Andau on Surah Tafsir Al-Ikhlas by Shaykh Ibrahim Nas at 10 o'clock, inshallah. So without further ado, don't forget, although it's remaining nights of Ramadan. So inshallah, see you all of you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.